Hello there, this is C.W. Johnson Jr., and this is Off the Beaten Civil War Path. Today I'm at the ruins of Fort Jackson and almost Fort St. Philip in Plaquemines Parish, Louisiana. Now, before you get to the ruins of Fort Jackson, you can always stop at the Fort Jackson Museum and Welcome Center. Unfortunately today it is closed, probably because of John Bell Edwards shutting down the tourist industry with his restrictions on COVID-19. Looks like a substantial, though small, but professional and well-organized museum they have in there. It's unfortunately closed due to the COVID-19 concerns. Here's some interesting history about the founder of the Rotary Club. This is the picnic area here. Nice shady spot with the Spanish moss leaves and oak trees. Very romantic old South feel to it. There's a bunker, ammunition magazine. You would want to be in there to be safe from the cannonballs that would have made a nice pretty day like this very loud and deadly. Of course, you would not want to be in there if somehow the ammunition united. There's what must be an ammunition tunnel. There's no sign saying don't go in. Wonder what we will find. Lizards. That is dark. That is very dark down there. And the tunnel continues. I'm not feeling adventurous today. This is what's back here. This is a ammunition place. Magazine. So yeah, it's not that far back, so it's not that scary. Where am I? I'm in a dark place. I must go towards the light. The light. The light. There's the light. I must go towards it. I'm free. Down there, right there, is a entrance to a magazine. Right there's an entrance to a bunker. So it makes me wonder if this thing right here was perhaps for ventilation, or if this is just a foundation from the wall that's no longer there, but it really looks like it was made for ventilation for whoever was down there in the bunker. Perhaps someone who's more knowledgeable of Regency era, Victorian era, antebellum era, Civil War era forts, coastal forts, can let me know if I'm right about that or wrong. Now, while Farragut was bombing the fort, Butler and his infantry, Rhode Island, Massachusetts, all New England regiments, were coming from the west, trying to dig their way through the swamp and the mud, and the underbrush and the mosquitoes, and that proved their undoing. They never reached the fort in time for the battle. They are there for the surrender after the mutiny, and these handrails there would not be here to greet them. Instead, they would be greeted by solid stone masonry walls with rifles and muskets looking down on them in mud and more water to try to get through to the garrison inside the fort. So if they had tried to assault, it would have been deadly. Yeah. Kind of zoom up here. See if you can spot some of the buildings in there, like that one there. Sure wish we could go in and look at them, but we can't. There's another structure right there. It's considering that this fort was used during World War I, the Spanish-American War. I'm not so sure about World War II, but that is definitely not from the War Between the States era. More picnic tables. Those look a bit more substantial than the other ones I was at. They won't fly away or during hurricane or rot. They just might crumble like Fort Jackson is. Kind of see in there now. There's a entrance to a magazine, some other buildings. Wish we could go in there and look at them. This park is the property of Plaquemines Parish, Louisiana. It is surrounded by on both sides by the Gulf of Mexico. Got the Mississippi River over there. That is why Fort Jackson is important. It was built after the War of 1812, Battle of New Orleans, to guard against another British invasion or possibly a Spanish invasion. Its significance in history occurred on April 18th through April 28th, in which it was besieged by the Union Navy under command of Admiral Andrew Frigate. It withstood the bombardment. So on April 24th, morning of April 24th, the Union Navy, since the Confederate Navy was pretty much non-existent, ran past the fort and demanded the surrender of New Orleans, which did so on May 1st, I believe it was, 1862. Cut off from New Orleans, the fort surrendered to the infantry, Union infantry under General Benjamin Butler, which never actually got to fight at the fort because they were too busy cutting through mud. It surrendered after there was a mutiny among conscripts in the Confederate Army whose morale was low because New Orleans had fallen and they were tired of being cooped up in kennels, basically, in these keels of hot brick and being in the southern summer sun, and tired of being pounded with Union cannonball. So they mutinied and the fort surrendered. He's going mighty fast. Fortunately, he doesn't have to watch out for being caught in a crossfire between Fort St. Philip and Fort Jackson. I wonder if those people could take me to Fort St. Philip. Now over there somewhere is the remains of Fort St. Philip, which unfortunately there's no road to get you there, and I don't have enough in my wallet to charter a boat over there. It's really a pity because that fort is it's just as important, if not more so, than Fort Jackson, because during the War of 1812, on January 9th, 1815, after the British had been defeated at New Orleans, at Calumet, by Andrew Jackson, they sailed up the Mississippi and came in contact with Fort St. Philip. And that siege lasted from January 9th, I believe January 16th, and Fort Philip would not fall, no matter how many different ways the British tried to fire at it, or fire into it. The ships were so close to the fort that infantrymen inside the fort would fire on the British officers as they heard their commands being given on the ship. At one point the flag came down because the flagpole was destroyed, and the British thought they had won, but then after a couple hours the flag came back up. Very dramatic moment. Definitely should be in an epic summer blockbuster release movie based on the Battle of New Orleans. Now, these are some remains from the time the fort was active during the Spanish-American War and World War I. See, there's the turret, location for a gun, our American flag here. We've got a few plaques talking about the navigational history, important events in the navigational history of the Mississippi River and Louisiana, including the first time that Mardi Gras was celebrated in the New World. Pitiful. Just pitiful. As you can see, there are railings inside the fort for when people used to be allowed in, or I guess when special tours are given. But unfortunately, since this important fort in American history is not cared for by the national park system or the state park system, it can't be as kept up as well as it should be, which is a pity. Here's a monument to the French explorer La Salle. Unfortunately, there are no monuments here to the Union Navy, and Union Army, Confederate Navy, and Confederate soldiers and sailors and Army, and the British soldiers and sailors, and the U.S. soldiers and sailors from the battle of Fort Phillip and the battles of Fort Phillip and Jackson. Those need to be here so those men can be reserved, because any man who fought and died for what he believed in during that war and was willing to die for it deserves to be remembered. We got some alligators floating in the moat around the fort. That's probably what General Butler would have had to contend with if his infantry had to attack the fort head on. Is that alligator gar, or alligator, or eels, or what is that? Maybe it's, I don't know, otter? Hey, Louisiana Park System and National Park Service, do y'all be considering taking this fort under your wing and opening it to the public so they can learn more about its role in American history? This fort also needs some monuments to both the Union and Confederate soldiers and sailors who participated in the battle here. Inside the fort, or along the levee there, and we definitely need some memorials across the river there, and monuments to the soldiers and sailors, both British and American, who took part in the battles of Fort St. Philip during the War of 1812. The guardrails are already in there, so you can save some money in the budget on those. Thank you very much. An American and Louisiana citizen, requesting that this fort be preserved for future prosperity. Behind me is one of the historical markers you'll find along Louisiana Highway 23 that goes to Venice, Louisiana. The furthest point, southernmost point in Louisiana. So be sure to take the highway down there. It's quite scenic. You'll see a lot of interesting sights, especially the houses, the churches, the trees, and it does quite remind me of the Great Plains, very flat, a lot of cattle fields, but there's also dams, so it blocks your view. It's not as far as the eye can see, but it does remind me of the Midwest Plains. So be sure to come down here to Louisiana and check out what's left of historic Fort Jackson when you take the off-the-beaten Civil War path. Please like and subscribe. Thank you. God bless America. declared a national monument. Well, I need to do a lot more, better job of making it monumental, because it's an important fort. Behind me is one of the historical markers.